welcome in to Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on today's show, did yesterday's 53-man roster show us that the Texans are still open for business? They're still making moves leading up to that Week 1 game up against the LA Rams? I think so, and they've already started some of the move making. I'll break down what the Texans have done so far and what moves can possibly be on the horizon. But I have a quick question for you. Do you think the Texans have a top 10 roster? If so, go down and hit that thumbs up icon. Like the video if you think they do. Every single team in the NFL had to bring their roster down to 53. I think the Texans have a top 10 unit. If not, though, if you don't think the Texans have a top 10 roster, go down and tell me why. I'd like to know what is holding you back from thinking they have a top 10 roster, because I absolutely think the Texans are stacked this year and should be contenders in the AFC. All right, let's get to the first order of business news on today's show. My guy Aaron Wilson bringing this to us. Texans re-signing tight end Harrison Bryant per a league source. That was probably the biggest shock from the Texans 53-man roster yesterday, was the fact that they only carried 2 tight ends on the initial 53. I told y'all the Texans were more than likely going to sign another tight end, and it seems like a procedural move that happened with the Texans here, in the fact that they traded for Harrison Bryant. He had obviously signed a contract with the Eagles. I don't know if they wanted to lower that cap number a little bit by releasing Bryant, then signing him once again, or maybe keep somebody on the roster and then stash them away once the waiver claims have gone over and, free agency has kind of come and go. But Harrison Bryant back on the squad, and it is thought to be that he's going to be in the lineup Week 1 up against the Rams. So the Texans will, in fact, keep 3 tight ends on this roster. Just a little maneuver there they did for the 53-man roster by only keeping the 2 tight ends to start. And speaking of the 53-man roster, there's a lot of surprises that came through whenever the Texans finally dropped. They were like 2.5 hours after the 3 o'clock deadline, dropped that 53-man roster. I think these are the 5 names we got to be looking out for if the Texans want to move on from anybody or make any more moves, because obviously they just signed somebody in Harrison Bryant. They're going to have to make a corresponding move. So they're going to have to either put somebody, on the PUP list, on IR, move on from somebody, do something to one of these 5 guys, in my opinion. I think these are the 5 guys. Graham Mertz, Cam Robinson. A trade is still on the table. There could be a move made for Cam Robinson. I'm looking at the Chicago Bears. Ben Johnson today, their head coach, was very non-committal when it came to their left tackle. Maybe they are still trying to work out something for Cam Robinson. Jake Hansen, good story there, but he's kind of been on and off the Texans roster. Tommy Tagiai, really good player, and then Dylan Horton as well on the defensive line. But if the Texans make a move, I could see one of these 5 guys being a part of a corresponding move that the Texans are going to have to make. And then speaking of that, these 4 guys can return by Week 5. Joe Mixon, Denico Autry, Jaylen Reed, Hinish, all eligible to return. And I will say, I did make a mistake yesterday. I said Irv Smith Jr. could return. He was actually put on IR with no designation to return. So his season is officially over. Irv Smith Jr., I made that mistake yesterday. Just wanted to clear it up. He will not be returning after Week 4. He's not one of the 4 players. It's Joe Mixon, Denico Autry, Jaylen Reed, Hinish are the guys that can return. And speaking of injuries and guys who can return, Nick Caserio, DeMeco Ryans, they took to the podium today. And very interesting session with the media. Kind of back and forth, and wanted to break it down a little bit on today's show, because DeMeco Ryans said the expectation for Joe Mixon is we'll take it one day at a time. When he's ready, he'll be back. And DeMeco and Nick Caserio were very defensive against the media, against content creators, just like myself, in saying, y'all are all very quick to report on this and that, quick to report on injury, this, that, and the other. Y'all just want to be the first one. Y'all just want to get it right and not know the facts behind it. But at the same time, Nick Caserio and DeMeco Ryans kind of keep the facts close to their vest, and they don't want to tell anybody. So I get that they want to protect the players. I get that they want to, do what's best for them and do what's best for the team. But at the same time, all of you out there, Texans fans everywhere, we want to know what's going on with our squad as well. And we look to beat reporters. We look to content creators, other people that cover the team, that look at the team, like John McClain, who's covered the team since their inception in 2002. He was not a happy camper. look at what he had to say on the Joe Mixon injury front. I don't think many will be surprised if Joe Mixon doesn't play this season. Very, very strong words from McClain here. So much mystery about his injury, his rehab situation, timetable, etc. I've never seen anything like it in my 49 years of covering the NFL. Never seen anything like it. It's safe to say McClain and this front office are not gelling, are not meshing like former front offices and Mr. McClain. Maybe the fact that they haven't signed another back yet is good. So just one person that kind of came out and was speaking not against the Texans per se, but just kind of a rebuttal to Nick Caserio, DeMeco Ryans kind of coming out hot and heavy, talking about reporters, talking about people around the team who want information, who are looking for information. And it's kind of like Fort Knox at NRG right now. Nick Caserio, DeMeco Ryans, they don't want any information slipping out. And if it does, they're not happy campers. They are trying to be the most secretive organization in the entire National Football League, which kind of makes our jobs a little bit harder. You know, I got to work a little bit harder trying to find some sources, trying to find people that I can talk to, because we don't know the injury status of multiple players on the Texans squad. Joe Mixon being one. CJ Gardner-Johnson another. I mean, he made the initial 53-man roster, but we still don't know if he'll be ready to go week one. This coming from Aaron Wilson. CJ Gardner-Johnson. CD is in a good spot. Made a lot of progress. We'll see from Nick Caserio when asked about the veteran defender early in the season. Perhaps even he'll be ready for the Rams week one matchup. Now, that's a big what if. You know, CJ Gardner-Johnson dealing with, knee injury. I don't know if he'll be ready to go week one. We haven't seen him at practice. He's been, getting some light work on the side, doing this, that, and the other. But he hasn't been in an actual, game-like situation in pads since the injury. So is he going to be ready to go week one? I mean, he's a veteran. He's been around the league a lot, so I don't know if necessarily, he's going to be behind on the mental side. But on the physical side, I don't know if he's 100% ready to go. And I don't think we'll know until probably a couple days before the Rams game starts, unless they go ahead and designate him to, PUP, IR, whatever. But it's a tough decision. Now, coming up, I have the best free agents the Texans could target. No waiver claims made by the Texans today. So I'm going to look at some free agents that maybe could help at some of those problem positions. I'm looking at running back. I'm looking at secondary. Some of the positions that the Texans could look to target free agents leading up to that week one matchup. Before we get into those free agents, though, you don't want to be a free agent out there whenever we're talking about the number one daily fantasy sports app out there. Yeah, that's Prize Picks. Drewski loves it. You see that picture on the left? He's absolutely loving playing some Prize Picks, and I bet you will too. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Football, we are so flipping back. College football is here, and baseball, pun intended, is in full swing. So get started today with our friends over at Prize Picks. It's as simple as just picking more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. You could win up to 2,000 times your moolah. And for baseball, this is the lineup that I kind of concocted for today, and I was a little upset yesterday. Yordan Alvarez, first at bat, they decided to walk him. Absolutely cowards. But today, let's see if we can change that. I got Brian Wu, who he pitches for Seattle. Give me the more on the earned runs. I need Seattle to lose. So give me the more on that. Framber Valdez, give me the more on his strikeouts at 7. And my demon pick, Yordan Alvarez. Can we get a home run today? 0.5 home runs? Yeah, I'm taking the more on that. And at the bottom of this picture, you can see the two options you have. You can either do a power play, which means all 3 of my lineup needs to be successful for me to win, or Prize Picks actually invented the flex play, which means not all of these have to win for me to win. Pretty good deal, if you ask me. Get started today with our friends over at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Get started today with our friends at Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, these are some top free agent options, and I will note with the first one, I'm going running back. from my alma mater, University of North Texas. Shout out the Mean Green. Jeff Wilson. And actually, right before we started filming, he was actually placed on the Dolphins practice squad. And I know what you're saying, Jeremy, if he's on the practice squad, what do you mean? We can't sign him. Contrary to the fact we can sign him. There is a little bit of a kind of procedural measure that you'll have to do by signing somebody off another team's practice squad. He will have to be on the active roster for 4 games if the Texans decide to do this. But he's been going between the Dolphins and 49ers back and forth, really, really well-versed in that Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel system, kind of similar to kind of like a maybe Sean McVay-esque system as well, where Nick Caley comes from with the LA Rams. So I think Jeff Wilson, if the Texans are very weary about Joe Mixon and his availability to come back, remember, Joe Mixon can return after week 4 if he's ready to go. I kind of like Jeff Wilson Jr. He's somebody who's been in the league for multiple years, has really played well for spurts, and if the Texans need another guy, depending on how, Nick Chubb looks in the first 4 weeks, depending on how Woody Marks looks in the first 4 weeks, Daria Gumbawale as well, Damian Pierce, depending on how those guys play out, Jeff Wilson Jr. might be a name to consider if he continues to be on the Dolphins practice squad as a really good veteran guy who you can add and instantly play at the running back position. But I want to hear from you folks at home one more time. Do the Texans need to sign someone? If so, at what position? Let me know down in the comments section. I said it's either running back or secondary for me. Those are the 2 positions that I think the Texans need to focus at. Weirdly enough, I think we're good at the offensive line spot. I think where we're at right now, the players that we have on this squad, I think they're better than last year. And I kind of like the little bit of depth that we have with Juice Scruggs, Jarrett Patterson, dare I say even Blake Fisher as a backup on this Texans offensive line. Let me know, though, your thoughts down below in the comments section. All right, Jeff Wilson, let's go to the secondary now. Kendall Fuller still available to be signed and, was a starter for the Dolphins last year. Could he come in and be that cornerback 3? I know the Texans feel good about rookie Jalen Smith, the 3rd-round pick out of USC, but they only kept 4 corners, which very light if you ask me. I know some people are putting Jalen Petrie in there at corner. I still have him as one of the safeties on this team. You're looking at the 4 corners. It's Derek Stingley Jr., Kamari Lassiter, Tremon Smith, and Jalen Smith. Those 4 guys are your corners. Depending on how you feel about it, they might look to add another veteran guy. If Kendall Fuller maybe wants to go a little bit of ring chasing and go with a team that is really good and add to the depth of this Texans secondary, I wouldn't be opposed, especially if he wants to do a 1-year prove-it deal at a pretty cheap contract. Let's look at the next free agent option for the Houston Texans. Also in the secondary, let's look at Tre Flowers. I think he could be a decent option as well. Talking about, veteran guys in the secondary, looking to add a little bit of depth along this secondary as well. Tre Flowers played, I believe, with the Bears before. Also played with Jacksonville, 6'3", 203 pounds, out of Oklahoma State. Adds a little bit of a long, lengthy corner for you. I wouldn't be opposed to adding some help in the secondary, especially in the cornerback room with a guy like Fuller or Tre Flowers. Now, we talked about 2 corners. The other part of the secondary is the safety room, and that might be the more important one, in my opinion, especially with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, his availability for week 1 in the air. That's why let's look at Jordan Whitehead. Played with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last season. 79 tackles, no interceptions, 3 pass breakups. Is a decent option, and I think could, be a spot starter for you. Depending on how you feel about an MJ Stewart, he can be a guy that comes in immediately and helps out in the secondary. I really like what we saw from Jordan Whitehead just a couple years back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A little bit on the shorter side, 5'10", 198 pounds, but we have Jaylen Petrie. We're not worried about guys' heights. As long as you can ball out and as long as you are a, missile whenever it comes to tackling, I think you'll be pretty decent in this Texans defense. And lastly, in terms of the free agent options, going another guy in the secondary, John Johnson III. And I know these aren't the flashiest names. The Texans don't have a ton of cap space, and they're not going to go out and sign a massively flashy name. It's not going to be like a Justin Simmons. So John Johnson III played with the Rams. Where did Nick Caley come from? The Rams. And I know he coaches the offensive side of the football, but he was there at practice every day. he was there able to see the Rams defense. So maybe he liked what he saw from John Johnson in spurts there. He's played well for the Rams, also played with the Cleveland Browns as well. But a nice, backup option at the safety spot if you're looking to add another guy. Those 5 names, not, super likely, but if the Texans are looking to upgrade some of those positions, which I think the Texans for their starters are pretty much set across the board. But if you're looking for some good depth, I think those 5 names are really good places to start. Now, before we go, some NFL news to break down on today's show for you. And I definitely have some, I don't want to say mixed feelings about this, but was not happy, to say the least, whenever I saw this come through the timeline on X. From Tom Pelissero, Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice is accepting and will serve a 6-game suspension to start the 2025 regular season, per sources. The NFL and NFLPA were working to finalize the settlement, which will end Rice's disciplinary limbo and make him eligible to return Week 7 versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, I didn't think it was likely that he was going to miss the Texans game. I believe the Texans play the Chiefs. It's either Week 13 or Week 14. I want to say it's Week 14 that the Texans play the Chiefs. I didn't think that would be a possibility, but also I don't know if this is full-on accountability for Rashee Rice. For what he did, if you're new to the story, if you've been living under a rock, you don't know what happened. Basically, him and his buddies were racing, actually right outside the office here, where Chat Sports HQ is in downtown Dallas. I'm not even kidding. He was like 5-10 minutes away from here. Was going over 100 miles per hour on the highway during rush hour, basically got into an accident with a family with multiple kids in the car and left. He just left the scene. Him and his friends grabbed some things from the back seat, which, whatever that is, I don't know what exactly he was having to grab from the back seat, but and then they just left the scene. They didn't check on the family, didn't make sure anybody was okay. They just crashed their Lamborghini, whatever car they were driving, and then were off on their merry way. I think a 6-game suspension he's lucky that's all he's getting. I think he should deserve some jail time if you ask me. He did get some jail time. Probably not enough if you ask me either. But obviously, we were thinking that maybe he was going to have a delayed suspension because they were going to wait for that court date. I believe it was on September 30th. But NFLPA decided, you know what? We're going to just give him a 6-game suspension. Rashee Rice accepted that, so it's going to start Week 1 to Week 6, and then he'll be able to return in Week 7. Pretty lucky for Rashee Rice. Also, another little NFL news tidbit, and this one impacts your Houston Texans. Breaking, the Ravens and All-Pro safety Kyle Hamilton are finalizing a 4-year extension worth over $100 million. Sources tell me the former first-round pick, who's already one of the best at his position, gets paid in a big way. And you're probably wondering, Jeremy, what are we talking about? Well, Texans already paid Jalen Petrie, who, as we mentioned before, somewhat of a mixed bag for defensive back. Some people call him a corner, some people call him a safety. But you have 2 safeties on your roster that could be due for some big paydays down the road. One being C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who you traded for from the Philadelphia Eagles. He's only 27 years old and could be in line for a big contract, depending on what the Texans want to do with him after this season. And then Kalen Bullock. I know he's only going into year 2, but as we look down the road, he's somebody who I think is going to be a breakout player for this Texans team and be maybe one of the best safeties in the league. Kyle Hamilton, also one of the best safeties in the league. So this is kind of the price point that we'll be looking at whenever Kalen Bullock is up due for a contract. And honestly, that 4-year, $100 million will probably be the floor for what Kalen Bullock will be looking at once he's due for a contract extension. That's all I have for you on today's show, folks. If you want to hit me up on Twitter, chop it up. My DMs are always open. You can hit me up at Jeremy Chugs. And if you made it to the end of the video, we're doing something right. Go down and hit that subscribe button for free Texans content all year long. We actually, just minutes before I started filming, just hit 33,000 subscribers on the channel. So shout out to everybody who's hit that sub button so far. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for calling Texans Today, your home for your Texans news and rumors coverage. Let's keep it going, and let's get ready for the regular season.